And we are live. Good morning. Welcome. This is Friday morning Zoom in between Wall and Main with Collbox. It's Friday, July 8th, 2016. And, I actually think it's probably appropriate to start off with just a moment of quiet for the 2 men who were shot this week and the 5 policemen who were shot and killed last night. Okay, I think that's important. It's important to acknowledge.
It's not only about justice.
Uh-oh.
It's not only about justice and getting justice, but it's about...
All right, so we're going to need to mute somebody. Looks like everybody's muted now. Okay, perfect. So we have, as always, a very special show planned for you this week and a very special guest. I met Ed Lusiski at it was the Cal CPA flag show, the Flag Cal CPA show, one of those. It was Cal CPA put on by Flag Management. And we were talking with Ed and Chad, who apparently is social media shy, but we're working on that. And we were discussing Collbox. And I was very intrigued because I know that in my own case, I got so frustrated by the pain point of having to collect balances from customers that I completely changed my business model to where everybody has to pay me first. I won't even think about doing work until I'm paid. But not everybody can do that. I mean, I remember a while back, Doug Sleater had pointed out to me that the reason I'm able to do that is because I've built up a reputation and I have a social media presence through which I've established myself so that I can sort of command that. There's demand for what I offer, and I can afford to turn somebody away simply on the basis that they're not willing to pay me up front. So I wanted to acknowledge very clearly that, especially those of us who are starting out, we can't afford to insist that we get paid up front. Bottom line is, there's still plenty of people out there, other than me, who are billing clients in arrears and have to collect balances and come across that unfortunate situation when a client shows a complete and total lack of regard and respect for the time that we've put in, the effort that we've put in to provide the service that we provide, a total lack of regard for the value that we offer, by not only not paying us, but blowing us off when we attempt to make efforts to collect. I mean, it's one thing to respond to somebody and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to pay you. I really appreciate what you did. It's not that. I'm tight on cash flow. I will pay you as soon as I can, and let me work out a payment plan. That I respect 100%. What I can't respect, what I don't respect, is when somebody completely blows you off and they owe you money. It's just, there's no excuse for that in my opinion. So enter Collbox, which is the best way, I think, Ed, I heard you describe it yourself the day we met, was it's sort of like Fundera for collections, right? So in the similar manner that Fundera sources lots of different loan resources in order to help you find a loan, what Collbox does is it sources lots of different collection agents and vets them so that when the time comes that you need to send somebody into collections because you've tried every other measure and it's failed, Collbox will actually, vet the collections agents and put you together with the right collections agent. So it saves you all that time and trouble of having to go through 8 million collections agents and figure out which one's right for you. Collbox will do that footwork for you and get your balances collected. So Ed, thank you for taking the time to be on the show. And at this point, I'll shut up and let you explain a little bit more about who you are, what you do, and whom you do it for.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining. I'm excited to be here. As Seth said, that we met at the flag show in LA. I guess it was about a month and a half ago. And a little bit on my background. So I am the founder and CEO of Collbox. But before that, I'm a business owner. I'm a technologist by trade. I've out of college worked for Broadcast Yahoo, which was Mark Cuban's company. Left there, have worked for several startups. I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur, if you will. Several smaller companies. I get invigorated by seeing people's ideas and building those into viable companies. So I've worked through that. A lot of companies, private equity groups, but again, in technology. So my role has always been running and helping with technology. I've been doing technology consulting for about the last 6 years. But as a business owner, as we started to grow, like a lot of people, you kind of start with your network and it's a little more organic growth. But as you start to scale, you start taking on more and more clients, and the relationships aren't necessarily there. You're just bringing the work in, and that's perfectly fine. But what we ran into was, the same problem that Seth described, which is, you start getting customers that are, slow paying or no paying. And, there's customers that slow pay and, they're consistent with it. So they don't pay on your net 30, they pay on maybe net 45, and that's fine. You can work that into your working capital flow, and you understand that will come in. But we just got to the point where, customers were not paying at all, and trying to call and haggle and get them to pay, send more invoices, more emails, and as Seth described, yeah, it's great if you get an expectation set where they come in and say, we're sorry, we have this problem, but can we pay it off over the next 2 months? Okay, that's perfectly fine. But we run into that where, okay, they make a payment, and then a month later, you're back to square one because you're having to haggle with them again. So I've been through this process many times, and going through that, I finally was trying to find an outlet. So I started looking at collections, calling agencies, talking to them, and ended up having more questions than answered, because I kind of likened it to the IRS problem. If you call the IRS 10 times and ask them the same question, you're going to get 10 different answers.
And I'm sorry, I just have to interrupt you for 1 second, because this is a very important public service announcement. I want to let you know that Chad is actually about to join us. Chad is here in the waiting room. I'm letting him in. So.
Oh, okay.
Chad Box.
There he is, I think, somewhere.
So, yep, Chad is here in the window somewhere. Or either that, or he's one of our non-video participants. But it's okay. Welcome, Chad. And if you need to unmute and say hello, I can unmute you. There we go. Chad, you with us? All right. Meanwhile, please continue.
Anyway, so as I was saying, I kind of like it's the IRS problem where you call the IRS 10 times asking the same question, you get 10 different answers. Well, with collections, you call 10 different agencies with a debt, and you'll get the same answer, which is, oh yes, we're great at that. But you really have no way to know if they are good at it or not. A lot of agencies can technically collect on most debts. However, they all tend to specialize. They're really great at certain areas. Some are great at medical. Some are great at retail.
And actually, let me stop you there with a question. What would make it's? I mean, and I'm purposely asking this, knowing that I'm asking from a place of pure ignorance. Why would it make a difference what industry I'm collecting for? I mean, isn't collecting just collecting? I just need to call them and say, hey, you need to pay, or how do you differentiate why an agent would be good at collecting for one industry versus another?
A lot of it's just, I think they tend to, as they grow, they tend to fall into specializations, which is they're really great at collecting medical or retail or transportation because they understand, just how to apply the right leverage and the right conversation to get the debts paid. I mean, best case, you turn it over to a collection agent, and simply getting that first call from a third party all of a sudden elevates it to, oh, this is really serious. Because a lot of, debtors in this case will, they'll drag it out because there's a relationship there, and they're kind of taking your goodwill and expanding on that because they're having maybe working capital problems. And whoever really just makes the most noise is going to get paid first. And so that's why it can be critical in those instances. But yeah, we find that a lot of the different agencies, they're more successful in these areas because that's where they've worked. And so we work to apply that with the collections that come in, so we know that, okay, well, these guys are great at that type of debt and they collect on it at a better rate than anybody else, so we're going to put you with them. And that breaks down into all sorts of different industries and different verticals.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I know, I mean, look, a lot of us have been through it years ago. I remember, getting calls from a collection agent. It was the worst feeling ever.
Yeah, and a lot of times, some people get a call and they're like, I didn't even know that invoice existed. They get a copy of it and they're like, okay, yeah, sorry, okay, paid, done. Sometimes there's a dispute. There's a myriad of reasons that they won't pay, but that's why the collectors are there, because to kind of mediate that where you can't do it. Or you've tried and failed, because I've gotten the lip service from clients before many a time, and it just gets to the point where you're spending so much time trying to collect from these clients and customers, and it takes you away from working and building your business. And the other side of that is, the more time that passes, the less time you put into it, because you just get tired of dealing with it, and you just get to a point, maybe it's 90 days or 120 days, maybe it's beyond that. And, you were sending an email a week, and then that's an email every couple of weeks. And then, oh, I forgot to catch up with them. It's been a month and a half. Let me try again. And then it just sits around your books, and you finally get around and you just write it off. And we're trying to get you past that. So part of our goal is to simplify the process where you can actually build collections into your AR workflow, because most people, it just kind of stops at that point where you've tried to collect it yourself. And there's some AR management tools out there, but most of them are just digital ways of doing the same thing you're already doing, which is making phone calls, sending emails. You're still having to do all the work yourself.
Right.
What we want to do is a simple process that lets you kind of have a completion to that, where, okay, the AR management stuff isn't working, so let's add this collections piece to the workflow, and try to get paid on that.
Now, what made you actually decide to, you guys were one of the winners at last year's hackathon, right? So tell me the backstory. How did you, A, get to the hackathon, and B, decide to make an app specifically around the subject of collections?
Well, brag a little bit. We weren't one of the winners. We were the grand prize winner.
Sorry, I didn't give you proper.
Yeah, so the backstory around that is I was having these problems with my company, like I said a few minutes ago. And going through that process of having to do the collections myself was tiring. And I got to the point where it was just taking up so much time, and these things weren't getting done. They weren't getting paid. So I started calling collection agencies and doing investigating. I had more questions than answered, or had more questions than answers, which, wasn't really getting me anywhere. So being a technologist, I came up with the idea for Collbox because really it was the tool that I needed for my business. I wanted to have an app because we use QuickBooks, we use apps. I wanted to have an app that I could just go in, click some buttons, and have it taken care of. And that's really where the idea came from. Now my technology consulting firm has a client that is a commercial collection agency. So I've actually been working in collections on the technology side for many years now. So I was familiar with the whole process and how it works. And it was really just kind of putting these pieces together and figuring out, there's something else here. Let's try to make that happen. And then, doing some looking and investigating with Intuit, and just kind of one morning I got up and started looking at the dev center and investigating and researching the API, and thought, yeah, this is definitely a doable idea. So let's see if we can do something with it. And about that time, I got the notice about the hackathon, and after doing some research and seeing who won the previous year, which I think was Method, thought we had a pretty good idea and a pretty good shot. So grabbed a buddy of mine who's a fantastic developer and our co-founder, and said, let's go out there and spend 3 days and give it a shot. If anything, it'll be fun. And well, lo and behold, we went out there and knocked it out and took the grand prize. So that was just really fantastic for a number of reasons. Obviously, it's cool to win the grand prize, but what was even cooler and totally unexpected to me was, after winning the grand prize, all the people that came up to talk to us about what we were doing and how they were having this pain point with their clients and themselves, that really hit it home. Because then I was like, this isn't just me. A lot of people have this problem, so we're definitely on the right track.
So I have a question for you. Would you say, especially speaking as somebody who's very experienced and familiar with the collections industry, would you say that sending a client to collections is a measure of last resort, such that I would only do it when I'm ready to sever the relationship? Or have you seen enough experiences to suggest that you might send a client into collections just to get the pounds collected, but still have every intention of continuing the relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. So we understand, maintaining the relationship can be a very important thing in a lot of instances. Sometimes you don't care. You're so tired of this customer, you just want your money. And it does run the gamut of that. And so our agencies that we work with can handle kind of the whole spectrum. If it's going to be more of a white glove service where, they're really more acting on behalf of you to collect your AR versus, just hitting them hard, trying to get the money. Where the last resort is, you go sue them for the money, because nobody ever wants to get there. But some clients just don't pay, and some people choose to go that route, some don't. But what we want to do is intermediate that, where, we've got some different options where you can come in, and if you need a lighter touch to that customer, because there's a lot of people that program their AR, so no matter what, at 60 days you're going to collection.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to manage it, and they don't want to mess with it. And that's a different approach than somebody who hasn't paid you for 200 days, has no contact for most of that, and is just avoiding you at all costs. So you're gonna handle those a little bit differently. And we work with the customers to try to figure that out. And we're building more functionality into the platform to simplify some of those processes. But yeah, it's all there, and you see both of it. Some people, once they get familiar with the process of using collections, then they want to go with a more, again, automated route where, like I said, you're adding it into your regular AR workflow. At this point, we're just going to go to collections with it, and not have to manage it anymore.
Right, and I would think that the default sort of what's the word I'm looking for? The default protocol would be start off light, right, and then as they choose not to respond, then you step up the efforts. Is that sort of standard operating procedure, or do we, as a client, do they get to specify and say to you guys, hey, look, I want to put this client into collections, but go easy at first, or just go right for the jugular because I'm sick and tired of these people if I choose to?
Yeah, so we've gotten some great feedback from customers since we launched, and that's one of the things that we do love is for people to come on and just give us feedback. How does it look? How does it feel? How was the process? And we take that feedback and we're building it back into the platform. So yeah, the idea is when you're going through and you're processing these accounts for collections, that we give you some options to choose how you want it handled. So do you want to preserve the relationship, or is it inconsequential? And we're actually working with the agencies to build in even more levels of kind of handling for the Collbox customers to use, to kind of designate exactly how they want it. Do you just want purely white glove? Do you want to be able to start it off light and escalate it? Do you just want to go for the jugular? Because every customer is a little bit different, but it's up to you to really determine how you want that handled. Because again, sometimes you just have someone that's aggravating you and you don't care, that there's no relationship there, you just want your money. Then we want to be able to let you specify that. Otherwise, it is a reoccurring customer. You just need to give them a little extra bump and get them back on track, and that's fine too. We want to be able to accommodate all those, because all those things happen. It's never one or the other. It's not black or white. There's a lot of different ways to handle it, and our agencies are well aware of that.
So I just click a button on your app that says either stomach, head, or jugular.
Yeah, pretty much. So as you're going through the process, one of the steps is there's a few questions that we ask you to kind of pre-screen it a little bit. And one of them is asking about kind of the collection style that you'd want to use for this customer.
Right. And it's I'm curious. I'm sure a lot of people are wondering this. I mean, collections, I think in general, and maybe I should say, maybe I should only speak for myself. I don't know. But the impression I have is that collections agencies in general, they have a bad rap. I mean, like I said, years ago, I remember getting a call from one, and they were just so nasty. And it was like the first call was so nasty, and the agent, I remember saying to me, you put the purchase on the credit card and you promised to pay, and you're committing fraud by not. I mean, they just went off on me, to the point where I was actually in tears because I felt bad. It wasn't that I didn't want to pay. I was going through a time in my life where I couldn't afford to pay. It's not like I fraudulently and deliberately went and charged something on my card and said, I'm not paying these guys. So it was awful. It was
right.
awful experience, and it made sure that I would never shop with that, or use that company ever again. To this day, I won't, because I still remember that experience so well. So why collections agents have a bad rap? Are there other reasons? And I'm curious to hear what you have to say just about that in general.
Yeah, well, what we found out too, even talking with our agencies, you'll hear this a lot, is there's probably more bad agencies out there than good ones. Because if you look at the news and you search for collections, you see a lot of agencies that work unethically, work illegally, make threats, do all these different things. And that's part of what we aim to do is vet out those agencies. We find the ones that work ethically, are certified. We know them, and we work with them directly and personally. So we know the people that are involved. And they work with us to, fine tune that process to, be able to deliver a product that the customers want and have control over. And manage those different aspects of it, because there are collection agencies that are super aggressive and super nasty, and there's some that are not, and again, it depends on the client too. If the clients, I can tell you some stories of some of the phone calls I've heard that debtors on the phone with collectors and how they just escalate the situation. So there's kind of a shield that they have to put up to kind of protect themselves because it's not personal. But sometimes the people that owe you money can get really nasty. Mm-hmm. It's unfortunate, but it's just the nature of the industry.
Well, yeah, and the impression I think people get is that collections agents are paid a commission based on what they're able to collect. So, like you said, many of them can be unscrupulous, and they'll do and say whatever they have to just to get the money collected so they can get paid.
Yeah, exactly. And what the funny thing is as years, and I think the industry is actually going the opposite direction now, at least with a lot of the agencies that we see, there's a tendency to flip the script on that, and the aggression doesn't always work, and they're finding that some of the softer touch and some of those processes actually work better to really get in and understand the problem of why they're not paying and get them set up into a situation where they can either pay it in full or get them on a payment plan or even negotiate it to a settlement where they can get it paid and get it off the book, so to speak. So you can at least have some closure on that and move on.
I have a question. It would seem to me that being a collection agent would be kind of hard. I mean, people could just block you on the cell phone. And if you go and sue them in small courts, don't you have to enforce the judgment? I mean, unless they're a Schedule C, can you get a lien against their house or something like that?
Yeah, and that's why I kind of mentioned why different agencies specialize in different areas, because a lot of them are more familiar with the leverage, and when you get into things like that with liens and those different components, they're a lot more familiar with those aspects because they do it more. You take like transportation, for example, where any agency can collect on it, but there's only a few agencies that are really excellent at it because they understand how to apply the pressure to get those debts paid through liens, or maybe it's oil and gas because there's products, there's mechanical, there's infrastructure that they can leverage to get those things paid. Whereas you, as just a business owner, is not necessarily going to know how to do that, even if it's retail. Well,
part of the problem with being like an accountant doing a tax return, if somebody stiffs you after the return, you've kind of lost all the leverage, unless the only leverage you have is that you won't provide copies of the returns in the future.
Yeah, you can't call the IRS and unfile it because they didn't pay their bill.
Right.
So, Ed, are you able to give us kind of a demo of Collbox and how it works and what it looks like, and do a screen share?
I can definitely do that if I can figure out where I do.
So if you move your mouse over the video feed, at the very bottom, a toolbox.
I see it. Let me get a browser window set up real quick.
You bet. So, and while you're doing that, if you can chew gum and walk at the same time, I have more questions, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in terms of the collection process, do you find that as a best practice, companies should maybe kind of build it into their standard policy that, let's say, okay, so and in the past, this was always kind of standard, at least from what I've seen, after 30 days, if they haven't paid, you make a phone call. When it gets to 60 days, you send a letter. And let's say when it gets over 90 days, that's when it goes into collections, And you might go client by client and make some exceptions, but generally speaking, that might be the rule. That if it's over 90 days and you know that you have in your procedure that by the time it hits 90 days, you've already made at least 2 attempts to collect, right? Probably more, maybe 3, that at that point it just goes to collections unless, and this goes back to what I started off the hour with, unless the client has actually done the right thing and responded to you and said, hey, we want to work with you. And as long as then of course from there, do follow up. And if they work out a payment plan, they actually make the payments. I have no problem ever with somebody not paying me as long as they're proactive in communicating with me and saying, hey, I'm working on it. I haven't forgotten about you. I've been on the other side of that coin where I've reached out to people and said, hey, you know what? Can I break this bill up into 2 payments? It's more than I was expecting. Right? And I can never imagine a scenario in which somebody would say no to that. But going back to the actual question for you, Ed, do you find and do you feel, based on your experience, that it's a good best practice for companies to build it into their whole AR workflow, a system around which the collections process is included, and that includes at least 2 or 3 attempts to collect before it goes into collections, but then a definite point in time after which it does go to collections?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to vary on the business. Some people, run into this and they only have a couple of these instances a year. Other companies are going to be more consistent. They're going to have larger volumes, so they're going to, they might have 5 people a month that, they need to, figure out how to deal with. And if you're doing it yourself, then obviously that's going to add up very quickly. And that could be an entire full-time position of just having somebody constantly trying to collect on those monies. So yeah, whether it's 30, 60, 90 days, that's really kind of what we're trying to solve, is building this function and simplifying it and adding the transparency so it can be easily built into the AR workflow. Because that's usually where it breaks down, is after about the 30 or 60 day point where you can't get paid, and then your efforts start to trail off because you just don't have the time and effort to do it. We want to be that outlet to solve that last step for you, if you will. And by building, we're working to build in some automation tools and a lot of other cool functionality to even pick it up a little bit earlier to help with some of those things, so you can hand it off earlier. And whether that's being able to go in and set, a 90-day cutoff where when they hit 90 days, it just automatically gets sent off to an agency, or we trigger these things at different times. But right now, we're just focused on the collection piece and simplifying that process, because that's the big missing piece right now.
Gotcha.
All right, let's try out this screen share here. We're not going to let me do it that way, so let me try this. Bear with me one moment.
Sure, take your time. Meanwhile, those of you, if you haven't looked in the chat, there's an interesting conversation going on here talking about, whether CPAs bill up front for their tax returns or bill in arrears. I'm curious, out of the people here who do taxes, what is your practice? Do you get paid up front for the tax returns, or do you bill in arrears?
I usually try, if it's a new client, I try to get paid up front. If it's somebody that's been an existing client and I trust, I'll bill them after I've done the return. But if, let's say in most cases for new clients, I'll get the money up front.
Right. Good morning, Mariette.
Good morning.
What do you do?
I actually have both. I do, for my smaller clients, like Dennis, I do it up front, or if they're really small, then I just get paid on receipt of the tax return. But for the clients that I do more value pricing, where I do consulting and bookkeeping and taxes, it's a package. So then it's a different, way that I do it. So it's both. And that's what I was kind of putting in the chat. It just depends on your client and, how you have them built up.
Why would you, let me put it this way, and I'm going to sort of ask this question from almost like a tough standpoint. Why would you not insist on getting paid up front? Are you worried that you would not have the client's business if you did that, or is there another reason?
No, there's a really simple reason. I have clients that I've had for over 10 years, and there's no need to ask them to pay me up front because they're going to pay me anyway. So why do I have to get them uncomfortable and say, now you got to pay me up front? And they would say, well, why? Don't you trust me? I'm going to pay you. So there's those conversations that you just don't need to have when you have a customer that's really awesome, pays you anyway, pays you well. Why rock the boat? That's me personally, though. That's why.
I'm kind of like that too. If I've got a relationship with them and they've paid, I'm not going to, throw that monkey wrench, into the mix. But if it's somebody that I don't know, then I'll try to get the money up front, or at a minimum, I won't even file the return until I get paid.
Yeah, at this point in my business, if somebody wants to come in as a consultant or for training, they have to go on my website and make a payment, period, new clients. And I even had a client this year who, it's value price consulting business management service. And, the idea was they're supposed to pay me up front, and they were paying by check. And 2 months in a row, they were, I didn't get the check till 2 weeks into the month. And at that point I said, okay, no more checks. Here you go. Click this link. I need you to put a credit card up, and I'm going to charge your credit card every month on a subscription. Well,
your circumstance is a little bit different from, say, a taxpayer, in the sense that you got more of a unique service, or it's not perceived as much as the commodities, where you've got people that, if you raise it too much, they may go to TurboTax or something like that.
Right.
So, yours is more of a customized situation where you tailor it, where it's kind of hard to tailor a 1040 to
Right. Well, if you're charging a flat rate for a 1040, though, you could certainly say to the person, hey, here, go make your payment, and I'll get your return done.
Well, honestly, for me though, Seth, is that I think they're scared to not pay because they want their tax return and they want it as quick as possible. So
Right.
they're not, I mean, at this point, I've never had a client not pay me for a tax return because they want to get their taxes done. And that's why I'm saying, I'm talking about the smaller ones that just, they, you know, want to get their taxes done in January, even before W-2s are released. So they want to get it done. So they'll pay me, I mean, they will pay me up front, but why do I have to have that conversation when I know I'm going to get it?
Right. No, I fully get with an existing client that where you have the relationship and you're not worried that you would be fine billing them in arrears because you've already been doing that. So I was just curious about that and how you guys handle that. All right, let's get back to Ed. So Ed, I can tell from some of the customer names here that we're using a data set that's based on QuickBooks Online's test drive company.
This is a QBO sandbox, correct?
All right.
So to walk you through it, I'll skip the login process, but like most apps, it's integrated with QBO. So if you already logged into your account, it'll simply throw you straight into the dashboard. And at that point, we'll walk you through a few steps to get your account authorized. And then at that point, it'll take a few minutes and we'll pull in all your open account invoices that are over 30 days old. And then that'll put you here into the dashboard, which basically gives you that view. On the left side are just, you know, your standard menu settings and integrations for that stuff. But and then on the right side, we've got, and I can't, it's hard for me to see. Let me move my menu, my video bar here. Let's break it down into a few buckets, which is the collectibles, the total dollar amounts that you're leaving on the table currently based on customers that have not paid you or past due or just, you know, slow pay or no pay. Bucket below that is anything that's already in collections. Then we've got stuff that's been collected for you or stuff that is not collected. So it either went to collections and couldn't be collected, or maybe it's really old past statute of limitations and it's not worth trying to collect on. You know, ideally there's very few reasons anything should be non-collectible. But at the end of the day, it's like some people just don't pay and you can only go so far with it aside from, like I said, taking that really final last step. But it really depends. If it's a $25,000 customer, then yeah, you probably want to go for the jugular and do whatever it's going to take. If it's a $500 customer, then we say send it through. You know, if you're already planning on writing it off, then it's free money at that point. And if suddenly you can get it collected at a certain percentage, then, you know, $100 is better than nothing, or $300 is better than nothing. So all that is pretty much, you know, money left on the table. At this point from the dashboard, you just select the customer that, you know, you're looking to send over. And let's see here, I'll just grab this one. This will take you to the customer detail screen, which kind of just details the customer information again, verifies the invoice or invoices. If there's multiple, then it's going to kind of give you a quick breakdown of what those are. Ideally, you probably already have an idea, but just again, kind of a verification step. Then from that point, you go through, and this is where we kind of ask some of those questions initially. So we already understand some of this, whether your clients are primarily commercial or consumer. But we ask you, you know, are they still in business or not? Or, you know, again, back to we were talking about earlier about the handling. So we ask you about, you know, how you want it handled. You want standard? Do you want, you know, handled with care? And this we're actually expanding on in the next release, where we're going to add, it's going to be probably more like a 4 or 5 layer options to give you some just more features and handle it in a lot of different ways, because we've gotten feedback on that would be helpful. So we're going to get that stuff integrated. Another thing is settlement. If you're willing to take 60% on that just to get it closed, then you can basically say 60%. The agencies are still going to go try to get the 100%. But if during the course of collection and conversation, you know, the debtor comes back and says, you know, I'll pay you, you know, I'm pay $800 on that $1,000 invoice, and they know that you're willing to settle within 60%, then they're just going to go ahead and take that if they can get a payment for it immediately and get that closed out. It just gives them a little more flexibility to work with the debtor to get it paid, whether that's all at once or on a payment plan. It just, again, some more features for them. And then some states actually allow you to, well, actually most states actually allow you to include the cost of collections on the collection. So if you have a contract with the customer that states collection fees and so on and so forth will be added if it gets to that point, then the cost to you is literally zero, because the agencies will actually add the cost of the collection onto the total amount that they're collecting. And even with the settlement, they will take their fees out of that, and it doesn't cost you anything. So, but not all people have that on their contracts. Some people just do everything on a handshake, or you have a variety that some larger projects are contract based, some are not. But it gives you those options, and we're working to add some more options in here as well within the next few releases. So it's only going to get more feature rich as you go through the process. And then after that, once you kind of get everything set where you want it, you go in, and at this point, we kind of look at your business, and while you're going through the setup, we get an idea of what industry you're in, and then we match that with our agencies to figure out who is ideal really for collecting on that debt and at the best rate. And there's a balance of some of that on the analytics side, but the idea is that we want to find you the lowest rate but the best potential for collection. So we come back, we show you what the rate's going to be, how much you get back, and then as simple as, yeah, I love it, great, send it off, and boom, that gets moved over to your collecting bucket, and it's off to collections.
Am I able to see other options at that point? Can I say, hey, I want to see if anybody can do better than 25%, or is at that point what you present me with is pretty much what I've got?
Right now, what we present you with is analytically what we've determined within our network is the best option for you. We're going to be adding in a lot more features in that area in the coming months, because we want to put a little more control and make it a little more feature rich as we build out two things, the front side, but also the collector network as well. Because a lot of it too is just processing data and building up those analytics to make it more of a living process, if you will.
Right. By the way, Chris Maxey in the chat at one point while you were presenting this said, "That's awesome." Chris, would you mind unmuting and chiming in and tell us what it was that you liked?
I don't think we can hear anybody.
Okay, yeah, he might not be.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Perfect.
I actually like the part about the bottom portion there, where you could add that the clause into the contract. I actually didn't know about that, and most of the client that we're using for Collbox right now, I believe they do sign contracts, and to be able to add that clause in there is actually pretty awesome.
Check with either your accountant, CPA, or even your attorney to verify how that needs to be done, because every state's a little bit different, and there might be specific phrasing you have to use, and it has to be certain things that say you can't. Usually, it's not as simple as necessarily putting it on the invoice. That usually doesn't apply. It has to be kind of if you're doing signed contracts, and it's usually just a matter of throwing in a little bit of language to cover that part of it. But check with them on that. But then I think there's only a couple of states that do not allow that, but generally it's allowed and is a good practice, especially if you're looking to make it collections part of the workflow, because then that just really, Collbox as a platform is no cost. You can jump on, you can connect, you can kind of look around and check stuff out. All the fees are set by the agencies, and their contingency. So you don't pay the fee unless they actually collect your money. It's a great thing. So it's really risk to using it, especially on older debt or stuff you're planning on writing off.
I have a question. So would it be fair to say you're kind of like the Angie's List of collections, in the sense that you're kind of like a market maker, where you're people paying you a fee to use the service, or are you just getting a % of what's collected? Yeah,
so we have kind of a partnership with the agency. So if they collect on it, then we basically get kind of a transactional fee for making that happen. But the core system, as far as Collbox, you can log into it right now, connect your accounts. There's no trial period. There's no credit cards you have to enter. It's completely free. And then when you go to place a collection, the rates are set by the agencies, and those rates are there's a pretty good range, but then it's typically based on amounts, and the age is the most critical thing. But we find they're very in line and very aggressive for the industry. And our overall goal is to build things better, faster, and cheaper for everybody. So we'll ideally be able to see better rates, better collection opportunities, better, just a better, simpler, and faster flow for everybody to help get these guys paid.
Does that mean you have like variable income depending on how successful or do they pay you a certain flat fee up front?
No, it's all based on contingency. So if there's no, again, if there's no collection, then there's no fee.
And just to be clear, because I think I saw somebody ask about this in the chat, Collbox doesn't actually do the collections. Collbox groups together all the collections agents and vets them so that when you use Collbox, Collbox will find the best match in terms of, think of it as, earlier I said it's like Fundera for collections. Another way to look at it is it's almost like Match.com for collections, right? They're going to match you up with the best collection agent based on the industry that you're in and trying to collect for, correct?
That's exactly right.
So a large part of your business is doing due diligence on the collection agencies to see which ones you want to use?
Yes.
Yeah, that's part of it. We also work very closely with them on the actual collection process. So, we get feedback and we get, questions from our users about these different factors. And so we act as also as a mediator and a kind of a customer advocate for Collbox users to, help streamline the process and just get issues resolved.
Do you have any kind of...
They're working with the agencies to help redefine the process a little bit to make it more streamlined and simpler for, the end user, which is you guys or your customers or your users or, clients rather.
Do you have any kind of liability if the agency is a little too aggressive or pushes the law a little too much?
No. So the agreements, the terms of service for the Collbox and the collection agreement basically take liability off of us and the customer, and the agencies are saddled with most of that. But the ones that work ethically and legally really don't run into those problems. It's the ones where they're acting illegally and getting sued by the Federal Trade Commission and taken to court because they're making threats and just doing things outside the bounds that they shouldn't be doing because they're being just overly aggressive.
So ideally,
we work to vet those out and find the ones that don't work in those areas.
So that'd be part of your due diligence, try to avoid those kind of agencies.
Exactly.
Hey, Ed, there's a question in the chat.
So let me pop over. Sorry, I'm still on the screen share.
No, that's okay. I can read it to you. Stay on screen share. Does Collbox post collected income to QBO? How does that work?
Currently, no. That's in our features, or that's one of our milestones that we're building towards. So eventually, it'll be a more of a kind of a two-way process. So once that stuff gets collected, it'll get moved over. We can post that back to QBO in addition to other features. Because a lot of times, if you go to collections, they might get a phone call and they might pay you, not the collection agency. And so in that case, we can make that adjustment. Obviously, generate an invoice or generate a bill for you to the collection agency for the fee. And then generate the same information for them, so that way everybody's books are kind of in alignment in a very automated fashion to, again, take the steps away from the users having to do all that stuff.
But it's safe to say it's in the big picture roadmap?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not in there right now, but it's on the roadmap.
Excellent. Seth, back to you.
Yes, back to me. Sorry, I was actually looking at the chat myself to see. So because this conversation about collections has also seemed to kind of lead to a parallel conversation around pricing and whether or not we sort of get paid up front. A few people have chimed in here in the chat, and I have to say I agree that possibly one of the best examples I've seen of how to set up your pricing and display it on your website is given by Chris Reagan. We had him on our Zoom-in a month or so back. And if you go to reaganfinancial.com, it's in the chat, /pound pricing. It'll take you to the spot on his page where it shows you the pricing table. And it's like he's pretty much seems to have got this down to a science where he's really done a great job of laying out a price. In fact, I have a call with him right after this to talk to him more specifically about that, because I'm actually going to use his pricing table as a model for building out a bookkeeping service pricing table for nerd enterprises, and I'm substantially plagiarizing from his in doing this. So I'm going to be talking to him because I'm really impressed with how he's done it. So it's interesting that that came up. And, you know, because I think the pricing thing comes in alongside the collections question, partly because it brings up the question, do I collect up front? Can I collect up front? Are there situations where I just can't? And when I can't, you know, what should be my policy, as we've discussed, for getting the collections done? And Ed, I want to thank you again for showing us this app. It's no wonder why you guys won, you know, the hackathon last year. You know, it's really just, it's a great app, and it looks like it's really going to simplify a lot of people's lives in terms of, you know, getting the policy set in terms of how you go about doing the collections, and then getting the collections done in a manner that's consistent with what your intentions are, which we talked about earlier. The intentions could be, you know, I'm done with this client, I just do whatever you can to get me the money. Or it could be the other side of that spectrum, which is, no, the relationship's perfectly fine, I want to preserve it, but they need to pay me in order for me to continue working with them. So anyway, that's in a nutshell my reaction to all of this. I think it's fantastic, but let's hear from some others. Mariette, it says you're talking, but you're muted, so I don't know, maybe you're talking to someone else.
Yeah, I was wondering about that myself.
How does it say I'm talking? That's funny. Where do you see that?
Well, evidently your mic will pick up noise even though you're muted, and I get a little notification up at the top.
It could be a baby in the background, so excuse that. I do have a little baby somewhere around here. No, I think it's really cool. I love this idea of the marketplace, or this collections kind of hub. I know a lot of companies are doing that. You mentioned Fundera. But a lot of the companies are doing this kind of, they are our partner to kind of find all these resources for us. So I'm assuming that's the idea behind Collbox, and I think that's really exciting. I really like that idea.
Awesome. Love to hear it. Yeah, we really just want to start the conversation about collections because it's really kind of a dark part of the industry that people don't know about. And there's a lot of companies that use it, and it's a huge part of the economy. I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar part of the economy of invoices that just don't get paid. And so it's really bringing that kind of dark area into the light a little bit and connecting it with a group of people that, you know, are unaware of it, because a lot of small businesses don't even realize that it's available to them, much less how to get started. And so we want to, you know, be the link in that conversation, but at the same time bring it down to a few clicks, add some transparency to it. So it's not something, one other thing you have to manage. You can literally plug it in, make it part of the workflow, and just really kind of not have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah, that's really cool. I had a couple questions. So one's, you know, I saw the model of when you they choose which kind of collections approach they want to take. So do they actually find out who is doing the collections? Do they have access to those agencies?
Yeah. And a lot of times the agencies will if you specify that you've got, you know, like an agreement to handle fees, or maybe you have some other contract with them that might be helpful, then yeah, the agency will reach out to you directly, or, you know, you to them, and you can facilitate some of that. We can pull some of the documentation, like the statement of account, invoices, and those kind of things from QBO. If you happen to upload other files, we could do that, but a lot of times most people don't use QBO as their file management. They offset that, and they keep contracts and all that stuff in another platform, either locally on their server, or using Dropbox, or one of the myriad of what is it, HubDocs, I think is a popular one. But yeah, so yeah, the interaction can happen between the collector and the Collbox user directly, but we're also there to help facilitate that, and we do a lot of that. So we'll get a lot of questions, or we'll help facilitate between the two, just to, you know, simplify the process, answer questions, and just make sure it's a great user experience. And we want to be involved because we want the users to, you know, understand it, and it's an educational process too, because it's new to a lot of people. This is not something that they're totally familiar with, so we're trying to make that, we're trying to be, you know, totally, I guess, holding their hands and kind of guiding them through the process as much as possible. And after they've done it a few times and they get the process, then, you know, they don't necessarily, you know, require that hand holding as much, but we want to just, you know, build the best customer experience we can, because that's why we're here.
Actually, Ed, on that topic, really quickly, one more thing. In regards to being able to pull in the data, like you mentioned HubDoc, we use Box, Dropbox, ShareFile. Is there integrations where that gets pulled in automatically or automagically, is what we like to call it?
Yeah, automagically. Currently, no. There's that stuff we're thinking about and trying to figure out some of those, because there's so many different ways that people store data. It can get really tricky. If, like I said, if everybody was storing their files and attaching them to the clients in QBO, then okay, that's one way. But then there's HubDocs, there's Dropbox, there's OneDrive, there's Google Drive, there's, everybody's a myriad of and trying to figure out all the integrations with that. It's something we're trying to understand, and a lot of that is as we get a little further down the road and get more of that feedback from users to understand what their needs are. That'll help us kind of figure out the direction that we need to go when we start seeing a lot more people with those issues. That's, we're using that feedback to help us, just add new features and kind of direct us in a way. Because again, we're building this to be an advocate for the users to help simplify and give them this outlet for adding collections to their AR workflow. And so a lot of that's driven by the feedback.
Do you integrate with either Zero or QB Desktop?
Those are on the roadmap. Obviously, with the QB hackathon win, the first, the primary was QuickBooks Online. But yeah, we're looking into Zero integration and some other platforms as well, including desktop. Desktop's a little trickier because it's a different type of integration. But they all kind of are things we're looking to do sooner than later. Just from the the TPA or the Pro Advisor standpoint, it's like not everybody's on QuickBooks Online. A lot of customers use Zero because they like the feature set there, or they use FreshBooks because they like the feature set there. And we want to be able to, you to leverage, and for those customers to be able to leverage the platform as well, because it's just as important for anybody.
And are there rules around collections that state that, for example, because I thought I remembered something like this from years ago, that you have to really document a certain minimum number of efforts to collect before you can send somebody into collections? Is that true?
To my knowledge, no. I mean, there are larger organizations that have built-in collections as part of their AR. Will literally, when a customer hits 30 days late, if they didn't pay on time, it immediately goes to collections, and they let the collection agency handle it. And a lot of times those guys will be set up to handle it more like a AR management firm, where they'll kind of call on behalf of that customer and they'll drive the collections that way versus, going for the jugular with these groups, because a lot of them are, repeat or existing customers. Right. But they simply don't want to manage that they don't want to manage the AR. They want to do the invoicing, but they don't want to have to hire a whole bunch of people to manage all the collection and AR stuff. So they'll literally hand it off and let the collection agencies do it for them.
And is there any kind of regulatory body that governs the collections industry, or are they pretty much on their own doing whatever they want?
There's the Federal Credit Protection Bureau, primarily governs consumer collections, which stipulates that they can only call once a day. They can't do a lot of these things, and that they kind of define the rule set for consumer collections. Commercial's a little more free-flowing, but then it's because, a lot of reasons, the dollar amounts, but they're starting to kind of encroach on those areas too, to try to kind of rein in some of these unethical agencies and kind of filter some of them out. But the agencies we work with work within those guidelines very much so, especially the ones that do consumer collections, because for them it's hugely important, because that governing body is, very, very aware of who's doing what, and they try to manage that for the consumer as best as possible. And I think they do a pretty amazing job, given all the agencies out there and having to kind of keep a hold on all those groups.
Right.
They kind of drive the guidelines for the consumer side.
Hey, Ed.
Yeah.
Stephanie Travis
has a question. Yeah, I was going to do that next. So, Stephanie, do you want to unmute and ask your question, or type it in the chat real quick?
Thank you so much. Ed, thank you so much for spending time with us today about your product, and thank you, Seth. My name is Stephanie, and I have an outsourced bookkeeping company. And I was wondering if there was any opportunity for any accountant or bookkeepers across the country to contribute to your blog.
Yeah, actually, we've been talking to a few people, but that is definitely something we would love to chat about. because one of the things we want to do is, and you know, we spend so much time building the app and talking to customers and doing this thing and trying to be engaged on Facebook and the blog, and yeah, we want to keep that conversation going, but we want to be also kind of be an outlet as well for just collections information and understanding, you know, hearing stories from you know, people like you or your customers and your clients, and understanding what their pains are, and letting, you know, other people see that, because everybody kind of has the same problem, and you know, we all talk about it. But yeah, that would be definitely reach out to me. You can reach me at ed@collbox.co, collbox.co. And yeah, we'll definitely be interested in chatting about that.
Thank you, Ed. I will. I'll send you an email.
And is there any kind of partner program for accountants where if they recommend you, they get a discount or a commission or affiliate thing or anything like that?
We've discussed that, and you know, I hate to say it, but we don't have anything currently in place. We're kind of looking at some different options for possibly building something like that out, because we see it as a benefit for us, but also a benefit for, you know, everybody else too. But right now we're focused on really just the app and the user experience, and kind of those, you know, initial phases. We launched at the beginning of May, so we've only been up and running for a couple of months after the hackathon, because you build for the hackathon, but then we have to, you know, we take all that time to kind of rebuild the platform into something that's, you know, scalable, that will handle X amount of people, and is doing all the stuff we need to do. But more importantly, so we can continue to build on it, add features, add functions, and take all that great feedback and just continue to iterate on that, to just build a better product and build the best product we can for everybody's, you know, needs. But yeah, so we talked about the partner program. We're setting something up. We've talked to a few people about it, and definitely something we're interested in trying to put together.
Great. And then we have some questions that people asked when they signed up for the webinar today. So Ryan had asked, what technology stack are you built in?
Technology stack is, this is kind of funny, but we just had a conversation the other day with someone. So the technology stack is, we use Clojure is the core system. React is what we use on the for the front end for the user interface, and then we use Datomic for the database system.
Okay. For those of us who have no clue what that means, don't worry. As long as it works, that's all we care.
It's all bleeding edge technology, so we can build this faster and better, and just create a cooler experience for everyone.
Right. Richard wanted to know, what are Ed and Chad's nicknames?
Richard knows what Ed and Chad's nicknames
I believe it's Edbox and Chadbox.
These were coined by our lovely friend Stacy, because I guess that's the easiest way to identify who we are.
Fair enough.
Well, they sound kind of cool, I guess.
Pamela wants to know, am I hiking on Saturday? Pamela, I believe I may be. The answer is I might be. It depends. I'm debating, because I also have a lot of content running around up here that I want to get produced. So that may, you know, take precedence over hiking. It shouldn't, but it might. Let's see. Gina wanted to know, how's my 4th of July? Is Ralphie afraid of fireworks? You know, in the past, he has been. He would go and hide under the bed, and he was the worst. We have 3 dogs, actually. Ralphie's just the one who made me famous. So this year, he was actually pretty good with it. He didn't seem to be too bothered by it. And other than that, 4th of July was great, quiet. I tend to lay low on these kinds of holidays where in my previous life, I used to get crazy. Mariette wanted to know, at what point does a small business need to use a collections service? I think we sort of answered that, right? I mean, unless you want to expand on what we've said already.
Yeah, it's kind of individual. It's up to the individual group and what you feel is necessary. If you feel that, you know, whether it's, you know, if you have a bunch of customers and it's a reoccurring problem, then probably sooner. Because one thing we didn't really talk about is it's kind of invoice value, because what a lot of people don't get is that, you know, invoices lose value over time. So when you generate an invoice on a net 30, you know, statistically that invoice only is valued at about 93%, because there's 7% of people out there in the world that aren't going to pay that invoice, and you lose approximately 15% of value per month after that. So that doesn't mean that a 200 or 300 day invoice isn't going to get collected. It's literally just kind of statistics. But when you think about it, when you get to that 90 or 120 days, your invoices have lost a lot, if not most of their value, statistically speaking. So, you know, what we want to do is really drive, you know, again, going back to that, you know, making collections part of your AR workflow. And by us coming in, simplifying the process, adding transparency, and doing all these other things, we make it simple to do that. So the idea is that you do use it sooner, because the sooner you start to collect on stuff, the better chance you're going to get at getting paid on those invoices. You know, when they go 300 or 400 days, there's no telling where those people are, if they're still in business. And so we want to kind of change that conversation and put the tools in your hands to do it. But yeah, that's kind of the rough of it, I guess.
Brings up an interesting question, actually. Do you guys have data on different industries and what the typical, rate of people not paying is? That would be interesting data to compile that you would have obvious access to over time.
Yeah, and that's, analytically speaking, we kind of we'll have some insight into that. There's some high-level industry numbers out there that are, some of the big industry groups. They take a lot of it's kind of analog reporting now, and they only publish them every couple of years. They don't do it on a regular basis, but they do get, because a lot of it's a voluntary system for agencies that are in these different industry groups to send back these 20-page questionnaires about all these different things. They compile all the data into kind of statistics. So there's some high-level stuff that's out there based on industry. I couldn't rattle anything off the top of my head, but
right. No, I didn't expect you to. I was just curious in general. But I think it would be a really smart thing for you guys as a company to compile that kind of data, because I would imagine that would present probably a number of opportunities for you in terms of marketing your product and so on. So
yeah, absolutely, and that's part of our engagement piece is we're bringing in kind of a new industry into this area. And so there's, it's educating the users on the process a little bit and helping them understand a little bit more how it works and just getting more familiar with it, because, a lot of people just don't understand the industry. And so if we can simplify that, great. If we can educate, that's fantastic. And that's what we want to do. Because like I said, once you come in and you've used it a few times and you're familiar with it, it's not this, it's not this big scary thing. But for most people, they're not even aware that it's an option. So if we kind of bring that to their level and just make it easier for them, and we can automate it for them, then everybody wins.
Right. Yeah. I mean, certainly, if you could reach out to people by industry based on the information they have in their QuickBooks Online company, and say things to them like, "Hey, it looks like you have so much in accounts receivable that's beyond 60 days, and in your industry, it's this is the probability that you're not going to collect this portion of that money." It might encourage people to use your service more and more quickly.
Right. Because. And it also goes down to time base too. So the sooner you use it, the rates are going to be better. When things start to get, 2 years, 3 years old, the rates increase significantly. So that's kind of another process too. And it just comes down to understanding your flows and the value of, these overpaid or non-paid invoices and building that into your existing workflow.
Got it. Okay, and then last question. Unfortunately, Dennis just dropped off. It was his question. He wanted to know, has QBO passed QB Desktop in yearly sales yet? I don't know about the sales. My understanding, though, is that most new companies are going straight into QuickBooks Online, whereas most of the people who are in desktop are people who have been in desktop and have been around a while. So
yeah, I think that's the number that I heard, or I didn't hear the number, but the last bit that I heard was, I think last year was the first year they onboarded more QBO users than desktop users. So they finally hit their tip on the onboarding. Now, whether numbers wise, I don't know.
Who knows? But I think the bottom line is that it's pretty clear the direction everything is headed in. I mean, it's a rocket scientist to figure that out. So we are 4 minutes past the hour, which means it's time to stop. But Ed, I want to thank you so much. I think this has been a really interesting conversation, and I think I can't wait to get the recording up, because I think a lot of people will get tremendous value out of watching this, learning about your product and better understanding the world of collections. And we also had some interesting dialogue around the subject of pricing, which just seemed to kind of come up alongside this very naturally.
So yeah, it was a 2-for-1. But yeah, because there are some areas that just that bill up front where it's not appropriate and we won't be a good fit. But there's a lot of customers and clients out there that have to bill in arrears, and that's just the way it's going to be. So I had a blast. I'm glad we were able to get on and just kind of let everybody know a little bit about what we're doing and why we're doing it. And it's obviously always great to just talk to people and really enjoyed the time. And thanks for inviting us.
My pleasure. Are you going to be at QuickBooks Connect this year?
That is the plan.
Exhibitor?
Well, we're still trying to figure that out, because I'll throw this in. We are in the running for the Small Business Apps Showdown, which is their QuickBooks $100,000 competition for apps this year.
Nice.
The voting starts August 15th, so keep an eye out for that. Give us your votes. And check out the app. Like I said, go log in, check it out. Questions, feel free to contact us. We're here to kind of help you understand and you know, get some feedback. We'd love to hear from you.
Great. Thanks again, Ed. Richard, parting words?
Yeah, I was just going to add to what Chad said. Not Chad, Ed Box just said. Don't forget, tweets are counting in the Small Biz App Showdown contest. So hashtag Small Biz App Showdown, Biz, B-I-Z. Tweet something about Collbox. They'd love it.
Yeah, and you can find us on Twitter at WeAreCollbox, C-O-L-L-B-O-X. You can reach me. I'm at E-L-U-C-Z-Y-C-K-I. Yeah, and like I said, follow us on Twitter. Check us out on Facebook. Come check out the app and talk to us. Let us know, you know, how you're feeling the pain and how we can help solve it.
All right, great. Thank you again, guys. And you know what? I think I'm going to have to schedule a ZIBWAM on pricing, on the subject of pricing. That's clearly a hot topic. I'll have to show people my method of how I come up with my estimates, because a few people commented that one of the Hangouts that I did, and we were still calling them Hangouts back in my previous company, apparently they liked what I did there. So now I need to do it again this way. I have it on my current channels. And
sounds like there's a lot of interest. So
yeah, I think pricing is definitely going to be a topic. Next week we've got Notify. After that, maybe we'll do it on pricing. So,
cool.
And we will see. And please feel free to join us anytime, any week. Come in and hang out with us and learn about the other apps that are out there.
Absolutely. I think it's great. I love it.
All right. Thanks, Ed. Richard, I'll talk to you.
Everyone have a great weekend.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great one.